Today's episode is brought to you by the folks over at SeatGeek, the best and easiest to use ticket platform out there. They take the confusion out of buying tickets using a 0 to 10 scoring system and a green is good, red is bad color rating system so you and your loved ones get the best deal possible. So whether it's going to see our beloved Redlegs at Great American Ballpark, the Bengals over at Paycor, FC Cincinnati, one of the area college teams, or pretty much anything in between, use promo code Riverfront at checkout and receive $20 off your first order. Click the link in the show notes to download the app and get started. That's Riverfront, one word, for $20 off.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the jungle. I hope everyone's having a good week, better than the Cincinnati Reds. Well, let's hope they're. Park, you been watching the Reds this week?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's so bad. I haven't watched the last 2 days. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not watching a game right now until I see them score more than 4 runs in a game. It's really
today was an offensive explosion.
4. Yeah, 4. I know.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Joe Farsing. That's Parker Fields. Getting our angry Reds takes off of our chest real fast. I haven't watched the game in probably a week and a half. I went to the game on Sunday with my son. He wanted to go with a buddy of his. I'm like, all right, cool. That's the one they lost at 11-1. As soon as they brought in Emilio Pagan out of the bullpen, I put on Twitter, I put on social media, he's going to give up a grand slam, and 2 batters later, he gave up a grand slam. So I have that going for me. There's a little bit of a.
I don't know if you saw today, Hunter Green got pulled in the top of the 6th. He has no outs. He's only given up 1 run to this point, but there's 2 men on base. His pitch count is only at 84. Hunter Green usually throws like 110 pitches a start. They always let him go deep into the pitch count. He pulls him, and then Nick Martinez immediately gives up a double off the wall. Like, it's just.
It was a weird start. Like I wasn't watching the game.
Strikeout, so you pull one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball with like the most dominant stuff. Makes sense.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't have the game on. I was listening to it, so I wasn't actually watching it. But he's weird game. He pitched pretty well, but he struggled. Gave up 4 hits, 5 walks. I get getting somebody ready, but with no outs, you would have liked to to get the strikeout and then set up the double play, and then. Anyway, we're a Bengal show, not a Red show. I feel so bad for Nate, and I'm not sure who else is doing the Red show tonight, and for Tim and Ben on Sunday. They have to talk about this for an hour straight.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that right now at all.
We have a good team to talk about. Before we get into that, I do want to say, remind we are part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Those guys done an awesome job supporting us. We are happy for it. Do a favor if you're watching, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Rate on Spotify, Apple. You guys know where to find us if you're listening to us, obviously. So give us 5-star reviews if you want to. If not, don't leave bad reviews. Just tell us. Send me a message. Say, hey, Joe, you suck, or something. Just tell me. But make the reviews all nice, and then tell me what I can do better or where I can shove something. So, shall we get into what little news and notes there are for the week?
Yeah, we can get into that.
We shall. Team activities have begun this week. Joe Burrow, have you heard of him?
I have.
You've heard of number 9. Okay, yeah, he's kind of famous. He's kind of wealthy now. Good looking cat. Letting the locks grow a little bit longer again, like he did last year before the season started. So he is back throwing dimes in OTAs. Looked really good. Said he's gotten stronger. Obviously he's rehabbing from the wrist ligament issue. Still has pain in the wrist. Was evasive and kind of vague about how much pain or anything like that. It's the tolerance issue. Said he should be cleared for contact within the next month, so well before training camp starts. Do you have any concerns? There was a weird Twitter doctor thing going around, or it was
I saw that
insider that said that he spoke with somebody that said this could be something that could take years to where the bone has to grow back. I'm like, from the surgery in Los Angeles, I'm like, he had surgery in Pennsylvania, and it wasn't a broken bone; it was a wrist issue. And people were, again, making a big deal, kind of losing their notes. Oh my God, he's going to be like, either this guy's full of shit or his sources are full of shit, whatever. But do you have any concern or anything like that? I mean,
well, if you remember, like it's probably February, maybe March, he was at a Lakers Suns game, and he wouldn't like dap him up with his wrist, and everybody was like, "Oh God, he's done." Like, because he wouldn't dap up like Devin Booker with his wrist, like he used his left hand or whatever. So then everybody freaked out about that. But I don't think it's that big of a concern. He looked good throwing the ball. He looked fine. And I mean, if he's out there at OTAs this early in the offseason, I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. He has, there are trainers, there are director of rehabilitation, there are coaches. He wouldn't be out there if it wasn't fine for him to be out there. If he's basically just needing another month to be cleared for any contact, and camp doesn't start until 2.5 months, doesn't start till the end of July. I'm not going to say there's no concern, because there's always, you come back from major injury, season injury. There's always concern until there's no concern. We were concerned about his calf until San Francisco week, when his calf looked like he was back to normal. We were concerned about his ACL in 2021 until it was probably the Pittsburgh game, when he broke off and ran for a touchdown. Broke off a couple times, and was it a touchdown run or got hit? Something. Big gain, made a big gain with his feet, with his legs, and like, okay, yeah, he's good, he's fine. So, Tyler Boyd era in Cincinnati is officially, as if it wasn't already, is now officially done. He signed in Tennessee, 1 year, $4.5 million. Seems like a really good landing spot, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really good spot for him. They have a veteran receiver room. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd. Those are all three guys that at points have been number ones. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins has been number one in the league at points in his career, not just like on his team. I guess it's D-Hop the number one there over Ridley. I would say so still. D-Hop had a good year still.
Probably. And there's also the first rounder from 2 years ago, Treylon Burks, out of Arkansas. He was the reason that they let.
I think he's going to fall away and slide like.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, could he be available? Like, could they let him go? And like, he's got talent and ability, and I wouldn't mind having him in the somewhere in the middle of the Bengals wide receiver room. And Bengals have plenty of good wide receivers, but what's another one?
Yeah, exactly. He was a first-round pick, too, which definitely sucks. And he had a good rookie year, like you said, but last year didn't really do much. And they're pretty much, they're saying we're going to give Will Levis all the opportunities to be special and be really good and not make it a organizational issue if he sucks. Not make it a talent-building issue if he sucks. They're giving him the weapons, and they're all veteran receivers that can teach him some things, show him some things. So I definitely think it's a good signing for them and even for Tyler Boyd, because, I mean, Levis had a pretty good season, all things considered, for the games he did play last year. He looked a lot better than Bryce Young, a lot better than most of those rookie quarterbacks outside of C.J. Stroud. Yeah,
I mean, he looks like a guy who's going to be slinging the ball around a lot more than what they're used to with just handing the ball off to Derrick Henry and getting out of the way. So I think even if Treylon Burks, if he sticks around, I think he, is still in line for a decent amount of catches for fantasy football reasons. But yeah, I think for Tyler Boyd, going in there again, reunited with Brian Callahan, guy who knows how to utilize him, knows this isn't the same Tyler Boyd from 2020, 2018, 2022 even. He is a little diminished, but if you need a third down conversion, run him to the sticks, turn around, he'll make that catch.
Yeah, 100%. And he's still a very good, like you said, he's still very good in the slot, very good for underneath routes.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a concentration issue, the hands thing last year. That was weird because he had like a crazy streak going of not dropping the ball. And then last year, he just all of a sudden started dropping the ball like crazy.
It started with the Super Bowl. Dropped a wide open pass in the Super Bowl for a touchdown.
That was his first drop of the season, I want to say, that year. Yeah.
It was weird. And yeah, I mean, Callahan knows he's not going to beat man-to-man coverage, but you find him a soft spot in the zone and he'll feast. So good on him. Again, Bengals. Obviously, we knew that he, there was not really any chance he was going to come back to the Bengals. but at least it's official, and it comes down to a good spot for him. So he was a good Bengal, 513 catches, which is very, very nice number for the 513. So 6,000 yards on the dot. Was that right?
Yeah.
Weird to land on very specific milestones. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. He was very specific with what he landed on and everything like that.
I think he planned it. That's why he made the drop, because he knew by week 18, he was going to end up with this exact number. He got the script.
Maybe he did have the script. You might be onto something.
Yeah. What we had planned to talk about, or what I had planned to talk about, I don't know what Parker plans to talk about, but planned to talk about the schedule release, which had been kind of rumored possibly to be coming out yesterday on Wednesday, today on Thursday, and it's going to come out next week on Wednesday, 5/18. We'll go into obviously we'll go week by week with the schedule next week, because that'll be about the time we record. Just quickly, are there any? Do you want to play Kansas City week 1 on Thursday night? Do you what matchups that the Bengals have next year would you like to see? Where anything specific like that?
I think that would be sick if we played Kansas City first game of the season. That'd be sick. And I think, honestly, for the NFL, that would do the most views of any game. That, or maybe the Bills too. But, I feel like definitely the views would be crazy if the Bengals and Chiefs played game 1 of the season. I don't even know if I want to be in that matchup, though, in terms of, I don't know how well we're going to play on, a Thursday. You know what I mean? Because,
on the road.
Really well. Yeah, and we haven't started off seasons well, though, so, but it needs to change this year. We can't get off to another mediocre start. We got to start well this season. Just be 4-2. Just be 4-2. Shit.
Get Joe through camp without even coming back from a surgery or having emergency appendectomy or weird calf, or having the COVID year where there's no in-person meetings until training camp or anything like that. So
yeah, please nothing this year.
I don't know if I think I'd like to play the Chiefs mid-late. What's that?
On opening night. I still think it would be sick, but it just might not be the best for our ball club to win.
Yeah. I think it would be cool to play him.
Played bad last year on opening night, though.
Yeah, true. I've seen a lot of stuff that it might be they might have the Texans, because the Texans are now the new Bengals. Bengals have kind of getting forgotten. There are a lot of rankings out there of trios with wide receiver trios, and Bengals are all of a sudden in the back half of the top 10, 7, 8, 9, something like that. And they have Trenton Irwin listed as a starter. I'm like, first T.I., everybody likes T.I., cool, but he's a depth piece. He's not Burton's going to be the starter. He's week 1, assuming that health and all, can't assume health, but presuming, everyone's ready to roll. Jermaine Burton's going to be rolling out there as the number 3 wide receiver. And don't forget about these guys. Sleep on them if you want, but it's not going to take long for these guys to put up yards.
Sleep on, honestly.
True. The one game I would like to see is Bengals versus Carolina in Germany. Bengals do play Carolina. Carolina hosts a game over in Munich. Again, Munich is Cincinnati's sister city. I think the cities could play that up and actually make it a nice home field advantage. Carolina doesn't exactly have much of a presence, even in Charlotte, for that matter.
I was about to say Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. But you work something out there, and Bengals could have a really big home field, as big of a home field advantage as you can get when you're thousands of miles away from your home city. And I think it would just be kind of cool. I'm German heritage anyway, so I'm down for all good things that Germany does. Maybe not so much of the bad stuff. The bad stuff is for other podcasts, not for sports podcasts. So
yeah, exactly.
Outside of that, give me every other game Sunday at 1:00.
Really? You don't like primetime games?
No, it's too much. Maybe there's just too much PTSD from Marvin Lewis years. Because you knew they were going to get their ass.
Definitely that, because that hasn't happened in this era. We haven't gotten our asses kicked in primetime. It's definitely that. Because I feel the first year when we had primetime games, 2022, I was shook in every one of them until we won a couple. I was like, okay. We won the first one, the Dolphins whiteout game. I was there.
Oh, yeah.
And we kicked their ass, and the Dolphins were 3-0. And we were only 1-2 or whatever. I was like, okay, but yeah, no, I feel you. It's definitely PTSD though, is why. It's definitely
But part of it is I like getting that game and just being done. Then I get the rest of my weekend to not fret. I mean, especially with the Bengals being a good team, like by 4:00 Sunday, that rest of that Sunday, dinner tastes so much better. I'm not, sitting there with a puckered asshole for Sunday night football, or God forbid Monday night football.
Well, what about
and you got to go through all that stuff
at 1:00? Then how are you feeling the rest of the day?
Then you fix yourself a nice cold beverage, and you move on. You go out if it's early in the season. You go outside, play with the kids, or otherwise go throw on a movie. I'm not going to watch the second. The rest of the games. I'll just keep track of the score.
Do you watch other games?
Unless it's a big matchup, I really don't. It's more of just.
I just have Red Zone on all day. So what I do is I have 2 TVs, one TV, the Bengals game, one Red Zone, and then once the Bengals game over, it's just Red Zone is what I watch. But I'm watching the Bengals game the whole time. But when it's on commercial, then I look over to Red Zone and stuff.
I always have a scoreboard up, and if it's an interesting matchup, I'll watch it. Or if it's a game, if something exciting is going on, like someone's putting up 5 touchdowns or something like that, I'll throw it on. But otherwise, no, I'm going to keep track of it just because I want to / need to know what's going on with the rest of the league.
Yeah.
But to watch every single play of a game, to watch the Steelers play anybody, I mean, the Steelers are just such a
they're boring. I don't
boring team to watch.
Yeah, no.
Like,
but
they're solid.
Teams I like watching. Like I like watching. I'll give you my little guilty pleasure teams I watch. All right, so. The Chargers with Herbert. I don't know if I'm going to like them now with Jim Harbaugh, but they're always, all their games are exciting because it's always like 34, 31.
How are they going to blow it?
Yeah. And they're always high scoring. I always like watching the Vikings with Kirk Cousins. Always an interesting game, too. Falcons with Matt Ryan when he was there. Always an interesting game. Like teams like that score a lot but aren't that great. Like those are always the teams I like to watch, honestly.
That's how it was with the Lions in 22. And then, I watched some of their games last year too. Like this is, they're a fun team to watch.
Fun to watch, yeah.
I don't really, they have I guess they're more similar history to the Browns than the Bengals, but they've still not exactly a whole lot of success since the merger 55, 56 years ago.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad that neither the Browns nor the Lions have been to a Super Bowl, and it's been almost 60 years. Like, never mind winning one. I mean, yeah, I'm pissed and embarrassed the Bengals have yet to win a Super Bowl, but they've at least been there 3 times.
Yeah, our franchise has at least been there. The Vikings haven't been there either, have they?
Oh yeah, they've lost 4
Super Bowls.
At 3 or 4. Yeah, they've lost several.
Oh yeah, Yeah, I mean, not making the Super Bowl is absolutely embarrassing, honestly. Because our franchise is not great to begin with, and then just not getting there is even worse.
4 Super Bowls. Vikings were there in 70, 74, 75, 77. I mean, they were a good team in the throughout the 70s.
Oh, okay, that's what I was saying. They just haven't been in 50 years.
Yeah,
they were in the first 10 Super Bowls. They were in 4 of them. Okay.
Yeah, they haven't been in a Super Bowl in my lifetime. So.
And they haven't won one?
Nope. They lost to the Chiefs' first Super Bowl. They lost to the Dolphins, the Steelers, and the Raiders. So. Wow. And then there's the poor Browns that have yet to be one. Darn. It hates the.
Who else hasn't made one? Jaguars.
Jaguars, Texans.
But they're not. They get a pass though because they're newer franchises.
Jaguars, they're going on. This is their 29th season. Bengals had been in multiple Super Bowls by 29th season.
That's true.
Let's see.
I just think it's bad with the Browns because and the Lions because they're original franchises. That's why I'm
yeah.
They've been around for every Super Bowl.
I'll give the Texans a little bit of a break, but this is season 23 for them. And again, Bengals were in a Super Bowl in their 14th season, and then we're in one 7 years later. So Bengals have been in 2 Super Bowls by then. Jaguars, again, we're almost on 30 years. And then the Lions and Browns.
That's crazy. There's been no expansion since I've been alive. Because the 02 season was the Texans' first season.
Yeah.
I was born in December, so there's been no expansion since I've been alive. I haven't seen it.
I was drinking at that time.
You were already allowed to drink.
I was 22.
Yeah, I was in the womb the last time
Goddamn.
it was mentioned.
Goddamn kids. Yeah, they're probably overdue, but whatever. They're still going to move teams around and do all that fun shit that pisses everybody off. So,
Literally.
all right, on to the topic of the week. We are doing favorite Cincinnati Bengals non-current edition. So Burrow, Chase, those guys don't count. Joe Mixon would count. And we're just going to do the offense right now. We'll do the defense in a couple weeks after we go over the schedule next week. So, Parker, I will let you have the board and take your favorite quarterback, Bengals non-Joe Burrow edition.
I'm only 21 years old, so I've only seen 3 quarterbacks: Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, and Joe Burrow. But from what I saw, because I only started watching football in 2009, so I was 6. Carson Palmer was at the end of his reign. Andy Dalton was a lot better in what I like the era I saw. So Andy Dalton's my favorite quarterback. He was my quarterback growing up. Wasn't the best quarterback in the league, but he had moments where he was really good. He had moments where he was really bad. But overall, I'd say like he had a really good 5-year run. They didn't win any playoff games, but they made the playoffs every year. He made 3 Pro Bowls. I know the Pro Bowl doesn't mean shit, but second in career yards as a Bengal, first in touchdowns. He had a solid career for us.
Yeah, it's I think he's being remembered, especially. I mean, even now he's still an active player. I'm not sure where he is right now, but
he's on the Panthers. He's
still
okay for Bryce Young.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's still kicking around the league, but people were ready just for him to just get out of Dodge by 2017, 2018 when the team, and obviously that 2015 season was the end of that era of Bengals football. And
a lot of guys left in the offseason that year.
Yeah.
Lost Sanu and Marvin Jones, I remember. Yeah.
Whitworth.
Whitworth.
And the front office just kept trying to run it back with the guys that were around, AJ Green and Dalton being the duo, and everyone just kind of tired of him, and they kept going on. They kept focusing on what he wasn't great at or who he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't an elite quarterback, but he was a really good quarterback for several seasons, and the tide is turning. People are like looking back on him a lot fonder now, and like, yeah, I mean, Bengals were afraid to move on from him, but he was a pretty good quarterback. I mean, he's probably like right now he's the 3rd most decorated quarterback in Bengals team history. Burrow's going to pass him up before too long, but
I was always on the Andy Dalton like he's not that bad train. Like when people would act like he sucked and stuff, I was like, all right, like no, he doesn't. Like he doesn't suck. Like especially like I'm not talking about like his last year there and stuff, but like I'm talking about like when they were making the playoffs every year and people would say he sucked and stuff. I just never understood that. Like he was honestly, like especially the year he was like the favorite MVP, 2015, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks in 13 games, 3,250 yards, 106.2 passer rating. Like he was a better version of Kirk Cousins. Seriously, that's what he was. Like that's what he was at his best. And I think people just like wanted him to be better, which like that's fine, but like for a 2nd round pick, it's not like you got a bad deal there.
Yeah, nice return on investment.
2nd round. He wasn't the first pick in the draft. This is what I'm saying. Like people acted like he was the first pick in the draft. He was a 2nd round pick. He exceeded his expectations.
I think he has a better career than the 1st overall pick, Cam Newton. Like you look at their careers, and Newton had higher highs, but I think Cam Newton is probably a little envious of the career.
I guarantee you the Patriots in 2020 wished they took Andy Dalton as the starter versus Cam Newton because those were the 2 guys they were thinking about signing that year.
Yeah.
I guarantee the Patriots would have rather had Andy Dalton that year. And I think they probably would have made the playoffs if they had Andy Dalton over Cam Newton.
Yeah. And it's funny when people my age, or even older would go on and rant about Andy Dalton. Because we lived through David Klingler. We lived through Achilles Smith, Donald Hollis, Paul Justin, like Neil O'Donnell. Like we lived through a lot of just terrible quarterbacks throughout most of the 90s and into the early 2000s. Like John Kitna was the knight in shining armor because he was not terrible for like 3 seasons.
Not terrible was the
Right.
goal.
Like that was the like that was the goal for him, just not to be embarrassing in 2001, 2, 3 before Carson Palmer took over. So, yeah, I have nothing but love and respect for Andy Dalton. I mean, he and his wife are wonderful people. Like, they're very charitable people. Like, they still did a lot of children's charities, and especially if you do children's charities, for in my book, that puts you up another notch on my book. My quarterback of my youth, Boomer Esiason. As someone who formerly had hair and it was blonde when I was young and left-handed, Boomer Esiason was absolutely my guy. Just Joe Burrow didn't invent swagger as a Cincinnati quarterback. Boomer was that guy too. You see pictures of him from the Super Bowl, just walking around with sunglasses. Just a cool, awesome guy, leader of men. Second round pick in 2080. Wow. 1984. Try that again. Yeah, he was drafted 60 years into the future. No, drafted in 1984. 88 MVP, All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler as a Bengal. Made Pro Bowl once with the Jets. Again, just he kind of got passed by in the record books, and people in younger generations, I think, forget. And when you just look at stats,
game.
Yeah, it was a different game. I mean, he threw for 3,500 yards, which is not bad, but I mean that's only 223 yards a game. Like that's not a lot.
Bottom of the league nowadays.
Yeah,
starters. Yeah, if you play every game at least. Your audio cut out.
And yeah, I mean his 1988 season, I only threw for 3,500 yards, which is 225 yards a game, 28 touchdowns. Like that's okay. That's not great. 97 quarterback rating would put you maybe in the top 15 now.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different game. But for that day, again, for people that didn't, understand, like this was the NFL MVP. I mean, and it wasn't just a quarterback award back then like it is now. That like he was the best player in the NFL that season, and it really wasn't close.
Yeah, I mean, I know my dad loved Boomer Esiason. That's his favorite Bengals player ever. So I can't say much on him. I've seen highlights, but yeah, that MVP season I wasn't even thought of yet.
That was the first year that I actually started to follow football. I mean, I obviously knew the Bengals were a thing. I was a huge Reds and baseball fan, but I remember watching from game 1 of the season. I don't know, it was just kismet, just the universe saying, "Hey, maybe you should watch this team."
Yeah, I started following football after baseball and basketball.
Yeah,
I guess I don't know. I think it's because I played baseball and basketball growing up. So football, I didn't start following immediately. I started following it, like I said, in that 2009 season. Whereas basketball, like I vividly remember, like 2006 NBA playoffs when I was like 3 or 4. Like seriously, like it's weird. Like
that's me with random Reds games. Like going to random Reds games and watching games on TV back on Channel 5 when they were only on local TV. So I completely understand.
Yeah.
Completely understand that. All right, on to running back. I'm kind of, I don't say cheating, but I get the pick of the litter because I made the notes before Parker got to see him. So going to the clock killing Corey Dillon, best running back in team history, 8,000 yards in stripes, set the single game rookie record, 246 yards against Tennessee Oilers at that time. They hadn't changed their name, and the NFL single game record, 278 yards against the Broncos. And it's based on that one. That's been passed by Jamal Lewis and then Adrian Peterson, but just easily the best running back in team history. And there's not really any argument. You look at yards per carry, touchdowns, everything. He was the only offense the Bengals had for most of those years. Bengals had less than 100 yards passing in that game. He ran for 278 yards. That tells you how terrible.
Who was playing quarterback then? Like Achilles Smith? Like
Scott Mitchell. They made a change.
See, I know who Achilles Smith is. I don't know who the hell Scott Mitchell is.
Scott Mitchell was quarterback for the Lions throughout the 80s or throughout the 90s when they had Barry Sanders. Put up a couple decent seasons, but by the time he was with the Bengals, he was washed and just an absolute nobody.
Yeah.
But just an absolute stud, and should get into the Bengals Ring of Honor this year. He kind of made a big deal last off season because he wasn't, and he got passed over. It was, he made the people that had gotten in ahead of him before that were guys that should have been in. Guys, the guys in the Hall of Fame, Willie Anderson, Boomer Esiason, and maybe you could argue that he could have that he deserved before the guys went in last year, but he left with such a poor, he left everyone with a poor taste in their mouth with just kind of the way that he talked about the team and the city. I mean, he hated being here. He hated playing for the Browns. He's made this weird effort to reconnect, which is really cool. I mean, that's good friend of the show, good friend of mine, Jeff Trenopole. I mean, he's on with Jeff every single week, like legitimate, like good friends with him now. It's just weird. It took him 20 years to rekindle, but now we're realizing, no, this guy was legit. This guy probably should be in the Hall of Fame. Year after he left the Bengals, went to the Patriots, set their
best year of his career. Yeah,
best year of his career. Set the team record for rushing yards, won a Super Bowl, and got the plaudits that he deserved back in the day that didn't get when he just because he was with the Bengals at that time. So just
one of the most underrated running backs of all time for sure. Like if you look at his numbers, they're very comparable to guys in the Hall of Fame, better than some in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Okay. To the 278-yard game. Keely Smith started, went 2 for 9 for 34 yards. Scott Mitchell took over, was 0 for 5. Bengals were 2 of 14 for 34 yards passing on the day.
God.
And they still finished with 421 total yards offense because they had 407 yards on the ground.
Keely Smith was a top pick, right?
He was the third overall pick.
Yeah, I'm looking at right now. I just pulled it up. Yep.
Yeah, that was the.
He had 5 career touchdowns. Oh my God.
He was terrible.
Wait, hold up. I just have to say this. I've never looked at stats. He threw 461 pass attempts and had 5 career touchdowns. That's insane. With 13 picks. That's actually crazy though. That's absurd.
He admits that he just didn't take the studying part serious. He's come to grips after the fact. I screwed up. That was the year. Have you heard of the whole Ricky Williams, the trades that they were trying to do, the New Orleans was trying to do that year? Okay, so they were trying to trade up to draft Ricky Williams, running back. Yeah. And I'm everyone knew Ricky Williams was going to be just this absolute stud running back. Did you say I know who Ricky
Williams was? Sorry, I was looking at stats.
The trade and everything.
I don't know about the trade. I was like, I know who Ricky Williams is, but I didn't know about the
trade. So they were trying to trade up into the top of the draft to be able to pick him, and they were offering basically, I think they offered 10 picks. I can't remember what they actually what the actual net was. Bengals turned it down because they were one of the Keely Smith. These were just moving up a few spots. They'd still be picking in the first round in 99, getting their first round pick in 2020. Basically, their second, third, fourth. There's a huge package to move up a few spots. Bengals said, "Now we're good. We're going with the Keely Smith." That was Donovan McNabb and Tim Couch were the other quarterbacks in that draft. Those guys were decent. Tim Couch could have been a really good quarterback if he had stayed healthy. Donovan McNabb had a decent season. And then there was Keely freaking Smith. Ricky Williams went 5th overall to New Orleans. And just the crazy, why didn't they take that trade?
Also, though, Joe, Keely Smith Jr. is the number 1 player in the country in the class of 2025, dual threat quarterback. So he can revive and save the family's legacy.
That's hilarious.
6'6", 210-pound quarterback going to Oregon. He just committed.
That's where Keely went to school. So he's become a quarterback coach. Okay, so they traded with the Redskins. They traded him their first round pick, which was 12th overall, their 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, 5th round pick, 6th round pick, 7th round pick, 1st round pick the next year, which was the 2nd overall, and the 3rd round pick the next year.
That's crazy.
And Bengals could have completely reset their team. That's what the Cowboys did in 1989 when they traded Herschel Walker to Minnesota. Minnesota traded them an entire draft, and that was the draft where they got Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and all those guys, and basically built a dynasty out of that. So, yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
isn't that wild though? His son's the number 1 player in his class 2025.
I had not followed that. That's good on him.
Yeah, he looks just like him too. I was just looking at him. He looks just like him.
That would absolutely be PT. That would absolutely cause trauma if the Bengals, like whatever reason, ended up with him. They were like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, what if the Bengals got him first overall in 2029 or something?
Anyway, who's your running back?
I'm going with Jeremy Hill. Honestly, Mixon's my favorite running back, but I want to be different here. I don't want to just name the best player I saw at every position while I was alive. So Jeremy Hill, for one season, the 2014 season, Jeremy Hill was absolutely amazing his rookie year. Led the NFL in rushing the last half of the season. Was top 5 just in the league in rushing overall period. And that was with first 8 games of the season. He barely got any carries. He was the backup. And then he fumbled in that playoff game that we all remember, and that Steelers wildcard game. And after that, he just was never the same player. Struggled with injuries a little bit. Just didn't have a burst anymore, it seemed like. And he was awesome at LSU. I remember I was excited when we got him. I loved watching him at LSU. It was that trio of him, Landry, and OBJ. And he just, never lived up to what we saw in that rookie season.
Do you know why he had the ball in the 2015 playoff game?
No.
It's because Ryan Shazier
running the clock out.
It was because Ryan Shazier tried to decapitate Gio Bernard. I think it was a catch. Went helmet to helmet, knocked him out with a concussion. Gio was the more of a ball control, never fumbled.
Concussion. That's crazy. I don't remember.
Yeah, absolutely knocked him out the same way that Shazier almost paralyzed and killed himself just because the guy was a headhunter. The guy doesn't deserve the injuries and the career-ending injury, but the guy was a absolute cheap shot headhunter that just tried to go for the knockout blow and knocked Gio out of the game, caused a turnover on a play that shouldn't have been a turnover. There should have been flag. And then because Gio was out of the game, Hill had the ball instead and fumbled. So that was dark times. That day started very dark times for myself and Bengals fans of a certain.
I will honestly say in sports, that was probably the worst day of my life, sports wise. That was brutal. I remember that game. That was so brutal.
I had an 8-month-old upstairs, so I stayed.
I was already celebrating. The game was over in my head.
Yeah. I'm trying my best to not lose my shit and wake up a sleeping baby because I think my wife would have murdered me.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were not fun times. So
no.
Let's move on from there. Let's quickly. Who's your wide receiver?
AJ Green, best receiver I've ever seen in a Bengals uniform. Jamar Chase obviously is so damn talented, but he hasn't accomplished enough yet to pass him as a Bengal. But AJ Green made ridiculous catch after ridiculous catch. T. Higgins reminds me so much of AJ Green with some of the catches he makes. And AJ Green was T. Higgins' favorite player growing up, right? Too, I believe so. So it makes sense.
He was a Bengals fan.
Players.
Yeah,
very similar players. Second in career receiving yards, second in touchdowns, only to Ocho. He's only 1 touchdown behind Ocho. If AJ Green didn't get as hurt as often as he did the latter half of his career, I think he holds every Bengals record likely. If he doesn't miss that whole season, especially to his second to last year, the last year with Dalton. I think he also made Andy Dalton look a little bit better sometimes too. Andy Dalton threw a good deep ball, actually. He did throw a really good deep ball, and that was AJ Green's specialty. I remember that Hail Mary. He had 2 Hail Mary catches, I believe, for the Bengals, which was insane. I remember watching those.
One was at halftime against the Browns, and the other was end of game versus the Ravens, right?
Ravens, to send the game to overtime.
Yeah.
And him and Andy Dalton were just chemistry-wise, their chemistry was off the charts. He always knew where AJ was going to be. AJ knew where he was going to put the ball. And overall, he was definitely the most underrated receiver of the 2010s. It used to piss me off when they'd be like calling him the sixth best receiver. Like he wouldn't be in those conversations with Julio and D-Hop. Like at certain points, he was just as good as anybody in the league.
It really was he and Julio. I mean, they were linked together like from high school.
And AJ was much better off the bat early in their career, and then Julio just became a different animal.
Yeah, the Falcons became a better team and more prolific team, so he got to put up more numbers. But I mean, he and Julio Jones they were tied together in recruiting. Julio went to Alabama, AJ went to Georgia, and they battled there in the SEC. And then it was who was going to be the first receiver off the board in the 2011 draft. AJ was probably just the best actual. In terms of just skill of running routes, catching the catch radius, and then being able to make the spectacular catch of any wide receiver that
everything with his hands. Too,
absolutely, yeah. Didn't try to body catch something because that's how you get drop balls. Because oblong football takes weird hops when it hits your chest protector.
And if you watch T, like I know T struggled with some drops last season, but T normally catches everything out here, and then like always, and that's how. Like he definitely probably picked up on that from AJ Green, seriously, because like he catches everything with his hands as well.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you have to use your body, obviously, but
just a fun guy to watch. And Bengals and what they did with Green and Dalton was a pretty smart template. Bring in a quarterback and receiver at the same time, especially if you're drafting near the top of the draft and your cupboard is pretty bare. Bring in two guys to grow together. That's what the Bengals did with T. Higgins. They drafted him. They pick one in the second round after getting Joe Burrow because you want that guy to grow with him. Now, obviously, they picked Chase the next year and they took off as 1A. But it makes sense. So you have two guys that are kind of learning and like they can grow and kind of work on their own thing together as they're learning to be a pro and learn the ins and outs of the NFL. So
it is a nice template. Honestly, it's worked well for us.
And that's kind of what the I don't want to say what the Texans did because Tank Dell wasn't a first or second round pick, is a little bit later, but it does make sense to draft a wide receiver. And Bears, they drafted Caleb Williams and then Rome Odunze.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Let them grow together and figure it out, and then get that chemistry together one on one. Like that guy isn't used to catching passes from a different pro quarterback. So
100%.
My pick is the most prolific receiver in Bengals history, Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco. Never mind all the stuff. I mean, he holds all the records, all the team records for receiving yards, over 10,000 yards, most receiving touchdowns, 67 touchdowns, one more than AJ Green. He made being a fan of the Bengals cool again. Again, everyone who lived through the shit show of the Bengals from 1991 until 2003. I mean, Marvin comes in and they finally established a little bit of credibility, and that's when Chad took off. And by 2005, Bengals got the new uniform design. They had new quarterback, the big, huge armed quarterback, number 1 overall, Carson Palmer, and they were a fun, cool team. And he was just that huge personality. That's
an understatement. He's still famous as hell just from him and Shannon Sharp's show they have. It's hilarious. Like, he's a funny guy.
He's talking about how he wants to get into sneak into camp this year just to catch some passes from Burrow. The fact that Marvin Lewis actually let him kick an extra point in a preseason game was pretty funny.
Yeah, literally.
So
he still looks like he could play. Just off looks, like he still looks in great shape and everything.
I mean, he's only 46. Guy was always like skinny as hell. And the fact that he lived on McDonald's, like that's what I think is the hilarious part. He lived on McDonald's.
And he's shredded.
Yeah.
And he lives off McDonald's.
Not an ounce of fat.
No.
Like some guys are just, they say some guys are built different. That dude was built different. He was almost like too skinny. Like you kind of were afraid he'd get broken in half by going over the middle against Ed Reed or Polamalu, but
yeah, 100%.
He was durable.
Yeah, his career ended very, very abruptly.
Yeah.
Very abruptly. Went to New York one season, wasn't the same player, and he was just done.
Yeah, the 2010 year was just a shit show. That was the T Ocho
That
show.
TO year,
Yeah, and I mean that broke Carson Palmer. I mean that broke his brain. He wanted out of Cincinnati. He was willing to retire. And then Chad played a couple games with Patriots, and they cut him after 1 year. Went signed with the Dolphins. Dolphins cut him in training camp, and that was it, out of the league. I think he's still borderline. You look at where he was in times
it's
of
just crazy because
among
if
his
he could have
peers.
given you one more freaking 800-yard year, he's probably a Hall of Famer. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
seriously.
Like, he already cracked the 11,000 yards, which is like, where is he in receiving yards? He's 40th all time in receiving yards, which you get. I mean, I think you get in the top 25, which really was getting the top 25 is another 1,500 yards.
Yeah,
That's 2 seasons. That's
not just that. Also, like, just football fans, you can't, like, Chad Johnson was a very popular player. Like, that's also what it's like. I feel like he should get in for that. Like, Green was a much more quiet,
very quiet
player. Yeah.
I met Chet, or I met AJ Green, and he just so quiet, so reserved, and just like, you're wide receiver. Wide receivers are supposed to be these.
He's not a
big,
diva
garrulous personality. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he would never, like, show up a quarterback, really. Like, none of that's, like...
Yeah.
If he would say something to Andy, I'm sure. But, like, he's not gonna, jump up and down. And
he knocked the shit out of Jalen Ramsey. That was funny. Like, again, the most quietest, reserved guy. All of a sudden, paying the camera, and he's trying to rip Jalen Ramsey's head off through his helmet.
Literally.
Like, what the hell happened to get that guy that fired up?
Literally.
It's kind of like, what happened? Did he, like, I don't even know. Like,
I'm curious what was said there for sure.
Everyone, I mean, Jalen Ramsey was he's a prick. He's an asshole. He gets under people's skin. Like, that's his game.
Yeah.
And to get under that guy's skin was like, wait a minute, that can happen. So, moving on, tight end. Bengals haven't had, like, they've had some solid tight ends. They haven't had that fantastic. I mean, Bob Trumpy was a great tight end, but that was before my time, so I can't really count him. So I'll just go back to the tight end of my, the Super Bowl team, Rodney Holman, just rock solid, all-purpose tight end. Good receiver, made the Pro Bowl 3 times. Second team history for receiving yards behind Bob Trumpy. Went on to play a couple years with the Lions with Barry Sanders. So again, not a whole lot to say. It's just when your team is filled with Sean Brewers, Marco Battaglia, Matt Schobel, and then a litany of 1 year guys like Reggie Kelly and Donald Lee, and like there's not a ton to pick from. So I'll let you go on to your tight end. I think you've got a little bit better name than I do.
Yeah, same, but like there's not tons to be said here. Tyler Eifert, he was an absolute monster when he actually played and was on the field. The 2015 season, 13 touchdowns. I believe he led the league. He was Pro Bowler too, or he was towards the top of the league. And then without injuries, he's likely the best tight end in team history, truthfully. But then he just started getting hurt like crazy, and the production went down and down. And like you said, with a lot of these guys from that era, they just kind of kept running it back with him for a while, like hoping he was going to get healthy, and it just never happened. Had a season in Jacksonville, he was all right, 350 yards as a diminished version of yourself is still pretty solid, but just never was the same player he was in 2015. And it's really, he only has one season like that. So
it's funny, his last season as a Bengal was 2019. And that was the only season he played in all 16 games the year when everybody got hurt. That's when AJ got hurt in training camps. They had that one practice at that crappy ass field up in Dayton.
Mixon missed the whole season pretty much. Mixon only played like 3 games. Yeah,
and you almost wonder if Mixon and AJ might have come back if the team were, not
probably
bloody awful. Like, they talk about how the Bengals were trying to tank for Tua, which turned out to be a blow for Burrow, but no, they just got hurt early, and then the season just fell apart.
The benching of Dalton for Ryan Finley
on his birthday,
and then Ryan Finley, he was so bad, and then they had to go back to Dalton because they're like, we're 0-11, we might go 0-16, and then Dalton won a couple games to at least give us 2 wins. So it's just a normal year first pick, not a 0-16 season.
Yeah, and what's funny is Ryan Finley was drafted that year in 2019. I can't remember. It was maybe Jason Luck in Florida. One of the pundits from CBS talked about how in training camp Ryan Finley looked like the best rookie quarterback of the entire draft. That was Kyler Murray, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, the late Dwayne Haskins, and Ryan Finley supposedly looked better than all of those guys in training camp. Then he gets on the field, and he was just ass. I mean, he led us to the one victory against the Monday Night Football game
that
in
wasn't
2020.
That year, though. Yeah, that was
right. The next year.
Yeah.
That just, I mean, the one picture, like the only picture that anyone can remember of that guy is him on the ground with a huge shit-eating grin on his mouth, like after he's been tackled. I think it was after he ran in for a touchdown.
Yeah, and he literally only had 2 shots in the NFL. Those 2 years with us.
And we traded him for a draft pick. Traded him to Houston for a draft pick. They gave up something of value.
And also, the thing that was so frustrating is I remember the 3 games he played in 2019. Those games were all games that if Dalton was on besides the massacre, the Oakland game and the Pittsburgh game, the Bengals could have easily won that game if Andy Dalton was on the field. Like, they just needed 2 or 3 extra throws here and there. Yeah. And he just couldn't make any of them.
Yeah. So, oh well. Ryan Finley, we hope you're doing well with whatever you've been doing for these last handful of years.
Extra games to get Joe Burrow. Thank you.
Exactly. So, I mean, we'll give you the accolades that you deserve here. Real quickly, we'll just touch on a couple of names on offensive linemen. You know, throw out just your favorite ones, just throughout.
I'm gonna go Zeitler. Really good offensive lineman during that 5-year playoff run. Lived up to the hype. One of the few guys that actually lived up to the hype of their pick. Bengals offensive lineman. Really good player.
And then let him go.
And he's still been a very good player for a long time.
Yeah. I don't get that. But I letting Whitworth go, that made sense. Like it wasn't the best. It obviously didn't work out well. It worked out shitty, but they drafted 2 guys that year. Like there was a plan. Whitworth was old. I mean, Whitworth wasn't a young man. I mean, he played until 2 years ago.
He was going to be good till he was 40. We didn't know that.
That's the crazy part, that he was good for as long as he was. I mean, he was in his mid-30s, so I get the move. It just didn't work out for him. Yeah. So, but letting Zeitler go off his rookie contract to free agency was just a terrible move. That just obviously they've been searching for stability at guard ever since. They've got guys that they think are okay, but not much else. So
100% with you. 100%.
Any other offensive linemen?
No, that's all I really got.
Not even Big Whit himself?
I mean, Big Whit, monster. I don't know. Offensive lineman. I'm not going to act like growing up I was like mesmerized by the offensive line.
Right. So, you're not there grinding.
I'm fond of growing up. Yeah, you know what I mean?
You're not there grinding.
I pay attention more than I did, you know what I mean, back then. So it's like not grinding tape on the O-line when I was 12. No.
No, watching Kyle Cook or Eric Gajcek, and God, who was? I cannot think of the guy who they just had. I'm totally spacing on the guy they had just a few years ago before Trey Hopkins. I gotta go look that up now.
Like 2020?
No, like 2018. Maybe 29. I don't think 2019.
Clint Bowling.
No, Clint Bowling was a solid guy. He had to.
Billy Price.
What's that?
Billy Price. You remember that pick? Bobby Hart. Trey Hopkins.
That guy was terrible.
Cordy Glenn
traded for that guy. That didn't work out well.
Bobby Hart was so bad. He was on the Super Bowl team still, right? He still started on the Super Bowl team.
No.
Who's Bobby Hart?
That was Super Bowl team was Akeem Adeniji, Carmen, Trey Hopkins, Michael Jordan. No, but was Jordan still there? I can't remember if Jordan was still there or not.
I can't remember.
Either way, it was it wasn't very good. Why am I spacing? I'm going to think of it later
here. On the 2020 Bengals. Okay.
Yeah, he was flaming hot ass. So
He was horrible. I remember him. That's what.
yeah. I mean, the offensive linemen are obviously, from the 80s. I mean, Anthony Munoz, the greatest left tackle in NFL history, much less team history. In a 10-year span, he made 9 first-team All-Pros, 1 second-team All-Pro. I don't know what happened in '84. He got screwed over. Max Montoya arrived the year before Munoz, solid right guard throughout the 80s. He left after the '89 season at the advent of modern NFL free agency and pretty much was the harbinger that we should have realized that the Bengals were going to shit the bed and let good players go and not bring in good players to replace them. So, And then Rich Brand was just a decade-long starter through a lot of the lost crappy teams of the 90s and early 2000s, but at least was there. Last year starting was 2005 AFC North team, championship team. So at least that's something there. So.
You want to know my last? I'll give you one more miscellaneous Bengals player real quick. Auden Tate. That guy was good.
Auden Tate.
He was good. He made really, really great catches. Like as a fourth receiver, like he was damn good.
He was huge. If I remember, like he was a really big dude.
He was a freak athlete. The crazy part, this guy's 27. He just turned 27.
Just now?
Yeah, because he was a baby when he came into the league. He was 20.
I know he came from. I know he was out of Florida State. Russell Bodine. That's who I was thinking of.
Okay.
The center that they drafted him in 2014.
On the 2019 Bengals, 575 yards in 12 games. Auden Tate.
He had
receivers that year were John Ross and Auden Tate.
Yeah, well, they missed. Absolutely missed having AJ Green that year.
Well, and Tyler Boyd. I'm saying outside Tyler Boyd.
Oh yeah. I forgot that was.
I forgot Tyler Boyd was a thing, but he obviously I think had like 1,000 yards. But
he was still there. So well, that's enough talking about random guys who are no longer. Some of them aren't even alive anymore. Actually, I think all these guys are still alive. Yeah, they're all still living. So okay, yeah, we haven't talked about anyone who's deceased yet, at least as far as I know. Knock on wood. Hope you're doing well, Tyler Eifert. Again, if you guys like us, like, subscribe, all that fun crap. Don't forget, this will be in your feeds on Friday, so also watch our NBA Friday. It's going to be a fun one. Again, Parker, you're going over there soon to be recording live, so you'll presumably watch that before you get to this.
Literally.
So, Red Leg Roundtable this week, Seth was joined by Nate Dotson and had Keith O'Brien, author of Charlie Hustle, Rise and Fall of Pete Rose in the Last Glory Days of Baseball. Really, really cool interview. That's a book that I really need to check out. That's has more of the larger Pete Rose picture than just Charlie Hustle and then and then everything else. So looking forward to getting into that book. Late Night Reds every Sunday, 9:00 with Tim and Ben. It's going to be really difficult hour for them. I do not envy them because they're talking live. I mean, I could pause here. If this were the other show, you could pause and then just be like, God, what do we talk about? We're so to talk about, but no, they've got the show must go on. So
what is the losing streak at now? Is it 7, 8?
We're up to 8, and they're about to go to the West Coast where they suck anyway to play the Giants, who are better than their record, not great. Back to Arizona, and then go to Dodgers, and Dodgers are that Shohei guy's pretty strong.
Yeah. So, I'm not looking forward to that Dodgers series right now.
I'm expecting in about 11 days for the Bengals to be back home on an 18-game losing streak.
Nah, we'll win a game.
I hope not. Any final thoughts before we get out of here for the week?
Happens, David Bell will be fired, I would assume.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised I'm not kind of surprised that they didn't fire him after today. Like, not that managers don't matter, but so
they matter with bullpen decisions, like when to bring in relievers for sure.
Yeah. So, any parting thoughts before we boogie?
No. Good episode.
Man of brevity, I love it. Parker Fields, I am. What's that?
I was stretching and yawning. I was like, nope.
All right, this week I'm Joe Farson. That's Parker Fields. We'll see you all next week.
See you guys.